Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Casey Stiegel here in the Fox 4 News studios in downtown Dallas. We'd like to welcome you to our special Fox Local streaming coverage of today's protests that are happening not just here in North Texas, but around the country for that matter. Large-scale campaigns called the No King Nationwide Day of Defiance. The timing of this is President Trump's 79th birthday. It also coincides with a large military parade in Washington, D.C., celebrating the Army's 250th anniversary. You are looking at live pictures from Sky 4 right now over Dallas City Hall, where the event there is about to get underway any minute now. That is scheduled from 12 until 2. There are also events around numerous places in North Texas: Fort Worth, Arlington, Euless. We have team coverage, we have crews on the ground, and we have all of the angles covered for you here. Let's get you first to Fox 4's David Centendry, who is live at Dallas City Hall. No doubt this is going to be the benchmark event of the day. Likely, David, a lot of people are expected to turn out. What are things looking like right now?
Yeah, Casey, a lot of people expected to turn out, and I can tell you right now there are at least several thousand people here outside of Dallas City Hall at this No Kings protest that really people have been talking about all week long. We saw that protest on Monday that took over the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge. This is a different type of protest that is just now getting underway. I will say about 15-20 minutes ago, as they were getting people ready, just announcing how this protest was going to be, they said this is a nonviolent, peaceful protest, and the whole crowd just erupted in cheers. And another person on the megaphone said, "Let me repeat, this is a nonviolent, peaceful protest," and those cheers just continued on. So as you mentioned, this is in downtown Dallas, just outside City Hall. We have several thousand people here, and to my left is where the crowd is centered around some speakers who are going to be talking for at least the next hour from what we're hearing. Over to my right, you can actually see City Hall, and just to get an idea of how many people are here, you can see people just spread out here in front of the building, not even able to see where these speakers are at, but they're all able to listen to it, and they're just here to be present in the moment. Behind me, toward downtown, you can see that people are still coming in here to the protest, filing in. We can see at least a block away from this area, and people coming in with signs, and it looks like there is still a whole lot of people still left to come. So we're going to walk down here and just go through the crowd for a little bit. We saw a lot of people out here, obviously, with signs. We saw people waving flags, a lot of American flags. We know that was something intentional, that people were wanting to bring the U.S. flag out here to this protest. People are starting to listen to the first speaker, I can tell right now, and if anyone's wondering if this is going to be contained to this area or if it's going to spread out into the streets, I did talk to a protest organizer just a bit ago who confirmed to me that during the second hour of this protest, that's when they plan to do some sort of a walk around downtown. I was told it would be about a mile. They would not give the exact route, but they said it will be about a mile going through downtown. Again, that No King sign right here is what everyone's talking about. This is a coordinated effort, hundreds of protests across the country right now under this same phrase, No Kings. We did reach out earlier this week in an effort to try to get an interview with the organizers of these protests, both on the local level and on the national level, just to get a feel for what their message was. We never heard back from the organizers. On their website, however, it does talk about it being a nationwide day of defiance. However, it talks about it being a nonviolent day of defiance. So again, I mentioned a minute ago, everyone was erupting in cheers when they heard the speaker say this is going to be a nonviolent, peaceful protest. That's what people appear to be here for. At any protest, you always wonder about counter-protesters, and I can tell you we've been looking around trying to see if there's anyone on the opposition of this coming out here. No one that I've seen so far. So it's still early, but we have made a loop around City Hall, and everyone here seems to be people who are here in favor of this protest. Another question that a lot of people are going to have, and that we've been talking about all week, is what will the police presence be like? Because we know that Dallas Police Department is quite aware of this protest. We know that they have actually met with some community organizers in the past couple of days just to talk about what their expectations are here. And again, we remember that scene on Monday over on the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge where one person was arrested. There were officers in riot gear having to control that crowd that took over the street. From right here, I have not seen a single Dallas police officer in the past 30 minutes or so. That doesn't mean that they're not somewhere nearby monitoring. We know they always are, and they have some sort of a plan. But it seems like they do not want to make their presence felt right now because this is, again, being organized as a peaceful protest, so it seems like they don't feel there's any need right now to insert themselves into this sort of situation. So if you want to get another look at just how wide this is, again, we're at Dallas City Hall right now, and behind our photographer that we're pointing to right now, that is where the crowd is focused on a group of speakers who will be talking again for the next hour or so. We know this is just one of several protests that's happening in DFW, I believe 8 or 9 protests, but this is definitely the heart of it. This is where we expect the most people to come out here, and we're just going to keep monitoring it. We're going to be talking to people throughout the afternoon. I can tell you that I came from our station out to this protest just to cover it, which is about 6, 7, 8 blocks away, and there were a lot of people coming further away from our station, just walking out here. So a lot of people making plans ahead of time, getting their parking far away from here and coming in. Just very organized. A lot of people taking their time to get out here, and we can still see from a couple blocks away, people are still rolling in. So I wish I could give you a number of how many people are out here right now, but it's certainly at least several thousand, one of the larger protests that you'll see. Now, how many of these people will head out into the street when it does come time to walk? You know, who knows at this point in time, but it does appear to be some sort of an organized walk. We know there's some sort of a route for it according to the organizers. They just did not want to disclose it to us at this point in time. So again, this all centers, as everyone knows,
all right, we appear to have lost David's mic there, dropped off at the tail end there. That is live television for you folks. David Centendry reporting live for us at Dallas City Hall. David, thank you for that. We, of course, are going to be checking back with David throughout the next couple of hours as things get underway there. You heard David also talking about a relatively low-profile police presence, at least. There's been a lot of discussion in the build-up to this, leading up to these days, about National Guard troops being deployed across the state of Texas, and also additional DPS troopers being deployed to strategic areas in case things do get out of hand. They don't want a repeat of what they have seen play out in Los Angeles and in Southern California. So the police are there. As you heard David say, they're just keeping a low profile. That is certainly a tactic we see that is used when it comes to events like this. David mentioned other events going on: Carrollton, Kaufman, Frisco, McKinney, Arlington, Weatherford, Dallas, Fort Worth, Burleson, Sanger, Flower Mound, and Tyler are just some of the North Texas locations that have either already had their celebrations and their demonstrations today, or they are getting underway right now. A lot of them scheduled in the afternoon hours as opposed to the evening hours. Down in Austin, for example, they are going to be protesting at night. But there you see those Sky 4 pictures of the crowds gathering in downtown Dallas. And, you know, I heard David Centendry saying it's hard to get a gauge of how many people are at an event because you're at your own little postage stamp. But when we back away from the shot and you get this bird's eye view, this vantage point in particular, it really gives you a sense of how large the crowd is, the scope of this event. And we mentioned Denton. Matt Taylor in the control room says that they are talking in Denton, and that is an event going on at Denton Square. Dallas City Hall podium. We're gonna listen into that for a little bit. The idea of this coverage, folks, as we're with you for the next couple of hours, is to just take you around to these events, but also to let it breathe, let it be organic, let you listen to our people on the ground, describe the sights and the sounds, and also hear it for yourself. So I'm going to be quiet now, let you listen into this event going on now in Dallas.
For you, okay? Are you ready? All right, I'm going to ask you, is it okay with you that Andre Jose Hernandez Romero, a gay asylum seeker from Venezuela, was kidnapped off of our streets and is supposed to go into his asylum case with his lawyer? He was sent to a maximum security prison in El Salvador. Is that okay with you? Thank you. Is it okay with you that a United States Senator, Alex Padilla, is handcuffed and thrown on the ground for simply asking questions? Is it okay with you that Congress is passing or trying to pass a budget that defunds Medicaid for the benefit of billionaires only? Thank you for your answers, because it's important for us to establish what is going on in this country. And I want to share, the good news is we actually have people who have shown us the way of how to respond. One of them is Maria Ressa, a journalist. And thank you, by the way. Let's hear it for the journalists that are here today.
Up to your mouth, and I'm gonna hold this.
Oh,
here.
thank you. Okay, I'm told that even with my law voice, I have to speak louder. So okay, so I'm gonna share one story from a client who was.
No, it's not. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Just eat the mic.
All right, eat the mic. And the rich. Okay. So I represented a pro-democracy activist from Ethiopia. I tried his asylum case in the federal courthouse just a few blocks from here. At his trial, I asked him, I said, "Sir, you were an activist your entire life, is that right?" He said, "Yes, that's true." And I said, "And you were arrested 5 separate times by the government for your opposition to the government, right?" He said, "Yes, that's true." I said, "And you were beaten every single time you were in prison, right?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "And the last time you were in prison, you were tortured." He said, "Right." And I said, "Now, every time they released you from jail, they told you to stop your activism, correct?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Why didn't you stop?" This 62-year-old man looked at the judge. He got tears in his eyes. He said, "Because there is a price for freedom. There is a cost for democracy. I did that for my children." And those are the lessons we get from immigrants, especially people who have fled dictatorships. And we need to listen to them, because they are telling us they've seen this before. They've watched democracies can crumble, and they know it can happen way quicker than us Americans imagine. So we need to listen to them. We also need to listen to our elders. I mean, elders even older than me, if you can imagine that. And one of our best elders was John Lewis, born in my home state of Alabama. John Lewis was arrested 40 times, multiple times as a United States congressman. And he left us with these brilliant words, which were, "Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic, and don't hesitate to get in," thank you, good trouble. And he did. He got in good trouble his entire life. Bertolt Brecht, an East German playwright, he said this: "There are people who fight for a day, they're good. There are people who fight for a year, and they're better. And then there are ones that fight for a lifetime. They are the indispensable ones." I have one last question for you. Are you indispensable ones? Thank you. I'm going to leave you with these words of, we do have a patron saint of Texas, Molly Ivins. And she said, because we need to remember this in these dark times, this is important. So keep fighting for freedom and justice, beloveds, but don't forget to have fun doing it. Thank you so much. David Marshall, Common Defense. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so you have been listening live to the events there in downtown Dallas in front of Dallas City Hall. We want to take a bigger step back and give you an idea of what is going on, not just here in North Texas, but the impetus behind the rallies happening all over the country. The reason it's being dubbed the No Kings Rally is because protesters have been calling for President Donald Trump to be dethroned because they are calling his actions more like that of a king than that of an elected official. And this was born out of standing in solidarity with participants in California. It has been a rough week in Los Angeles and in Southern California after increased immigration customs enforcement protection measures were implemented, and then people got upset and they started rallying against the federal government and the tactics that were being used in Los Angeles. Then President Trump called in the National Guard. As you know, the Secretary of Defense talked about having active duty troops on California on standby, on the ready. That has been since challenged in court. The back and forth over whether it was legal or not for President Trump to call the National Guard into Los Angeles to restore order in the first place is another question altogether. But that is where we are today on this day, Saturday, June 14th, this afternoon, as people all around the country in more than 200 cities are gathering for this National Day of Defiance. Let's go now to Fox 4's Amelia Jones, who is live over in Fort Worth covering the other major event that's happening in the Metroplex today. Amelia, how are things looking there?
Hi, Casey. So far, things have been peaceful, and you can hear the cheers behind me. People are lining West 7th Street in downtown Fort Worth, and they're gathering in Burnett Park behind me. So there are about 1,000 people, maybe even more. People continue to arrive here. This protest started at noon. It's expected to go until around 2 this afternoon. They're lining the streets and they cheer every single time when someone honks as they're driving by. We haven't heard of any speakers, but we have heard some people on a megaphone telling them, hey, we need to cheer loud here. And so far, again, things have been peaceful, and we have not seen any Fort Worth police presence. But as David mentioned in Dallas, that doesn't mean they're not here. We know that they are probably here. They are watching things. So far, people have stayed out of the street. Honestly, seeing people in kind of that double white line turn area off of West 7th is the most we've seen them go into the street, but people continue to arrive here in Fort Worth. This is not supposed to be a march. It is just supposed to be a gathering place for people to protest. Again, it started at noon and it goes until 2, and we've seen a lot of people. Obviously, they brought signs, they brought flags. We saw someone riding on a horse in the middle of the street. And again, so far things have been smooth. They've been peaceful. We also haven't seen any anti-protester groups here as well. But Burnett Park, I mean, it goes all the way back to the other side of the street here. It's quite large, and there are people gathered in the middle of the park here, all with signs. There's also tents for organization groups. We know that this is going on across the country, and so there are organization groups for immigration. We also saw organizations for helping women and women's shelters and children, and so we're seeing some other organizations come here that maybe we've seen at other protests, but we are starting to see a lot more people arrive here in Fort Worth. Wow, yeah, that's a lot bigger than it was about 15 minutes ago. And again, people are lining the streets here. I'm on West 7th Street at the intersection of Lamar Street in downtown Fort Worth. And I really think that's what they want. They're lining the streets here. They want people to honk, acknowledge what they're doing. They're so far just cheering. We haven't heard any big chants from people collectively all together. That doesn't mean that won't happen later in our coverage here, but this is a extremely big turnout for this protest. It's, again, not supposed to be a march. We also haven't heard any speakers. There's not a stage up, but again, that person on the megaphone was encouraging people to be loud, to obviously, oh, here we go. We're seeing a chant start to form here. But yeah, so far they have not gone into the street. We haven't seen any police presence. Again, that doesn't mean they are not here. We know that when the protesters kind of start to take over the street or impede on traffic here, that's when we start to see a little bit more of that police presence, but that's not what we're seeing here right now. They are clearly respecting the street boundaries here in downtown Fort Worth. I can't understand what their chant is right now. I think they're saying we have power, or we have the power rather. But there are thousands of people here in downtown Fort Worth, and they are just lining this park area. It's a massive park. It's a massive square area here in downtown Fort Worth. And as we continue our coverage here, we'll show you, further into the park here. But again, we've seen people like that take out their cell phones as they're not protesting with the protesters here today, but they're filming it, they're honking, which again, I think is what people want is they're standing out here on the streets. I think that, shows them that these people are with them. Every time someone honks, they're very loud cheers, but so far things have remained peaceful, and it's just people bringing signs, they're bringing flags, like you see that man waving his flag, the woman with the megaphone. Okay, this chant is, "This is what democracy looks like." Yeah, and Casey, I think one thing that I find so interesting is there's so many different generations here. There's a lot of diversity in this crowd from what I'm seeing. We even saw a woman with a walker get out and obviously wants to be a part of it. I'm not sure what we're cheering at. I can't really see down the street here. Okay, I hear a car honking coming up the street. Oh, okay. We have a decked out car here in support of the protest. And this is what's been going on since noon here. We have people just driving downtown Fort Worth. Again, we're off of West 7th Street at the intersection of Lamar Street. Burnett Park is where all of the people who want to participate in the No Kings protest is asked to come to organize themselves. They're bringing signs, they're bringing flags. This is not supposed to be a march, but sometimes protests like this, they kind of take on a life of their own. So we'll keep things updated. We'll be here on the grounds monitoring things. We know Fort Worth police, oh, we have seen this guy on the horse with the flags multiple times. We know Fort Worth police is here somewhere monitoring it. We also know that the state of Texas has more Texas DPS officers available for these protests that are going on, really not just here in North Texas, but we know across the country, across the state. But we have not seen police really make themselves known to either the organizers. We haven't had a chance to speak with the organizers yet as well. But from what we received, from the information that we got, this isn't supposed to be a march. There aren't really any scheduled speakers. It's just really an opportunity for people to protest, to hold signs, to come together for, like we've been talking about across the country, for people protesting the No Kings, the Day of Defiance, as it's being called. And so, yeah, we're seeing more people come to this corner of the street where we are over here. And so obviously more people are coming as the time goes on. And this protest here in Fort Worth is set to last until 2 p.m. And obviously, Casey, we'll keep things updated here on the ground as kind of a little bit of what we're seeing. But for people at home, really, this has been what we're seeing. People honking, people cheering, people raising their signs, doing some chants together. really think there are thousands here. And more people are coming. Okay, we have someone on the drums behind us. Okay, we got a message from Fort Worth Police, and they say that the Fort Worth Police Department is working closely with our community and our Intelligence Fusion Center to monitor all activity during the peaceful protests that may take place in the city of Fort Worth. So again, like we said, we might not physically see them, but we do know they're monitoring these activities, and they will step in if needed to step in. People are getting a little close in the street here, but so far traffic is still able to get through. And there is that turn lane, so people are able to turn onto Lamar Street here. So there's that little division where the median is, and then you can turn onto Lamar. They're not blocking that. They're getting a little close. And Casey, if you want to take things back, we'll continue to monitor things here in Fort Worth, and obviously we'll continue to break in here with coverage of what we're seeing here.
All right, Amelia Jones, I know it's really hard to hear when you're out there right in the thick of things, and you're trying to listen and think and make live television and make your thoughts make sense, and you're doing a beautiful job at that. The crowd's really, really large there, and Amelia, I'm not sure if you're able to hear me or not. If you are, can you tell, is there any kind of a concern with the people getting too close to that street there? I mean, you know, it doesn't take much for an accident to happen, and the idea is to keep everyone safe out there.
Absolutely, and to be honest, as time goes on, the closer they're getting to that solid white line, traffic is still moving smoothly. It is going slow, and this is downtown Fort Worth in general, so obviously the speed limits are not very high, but it's obviously going slower than your typical speed limit if there were nobody in the medians or on the side of the street. And again, this is where sometimes we see police make themselves known if they are impeding on traffic and there's a concern for safety. From where I am, I have not seen any police, again, make themselves known or try to push people back from that solid white line. Maybe a little concerning as more people show up and they start to take over those spots. Again, they're just inching closer and closer to traffic here. But so far, oh, we have, someone kind of just stepping in the street here, obviously hoping that they stay careful and, you know, watch for their surroundings. But drivers are going very, very slow as they come through this intersection here. And we'll keep you updated because, as I've been saying, we know that when people start to take over the street is when we start to see police make themselves known, when they start to kind of push the protesters back for safety, for, you know, driver safety, for the protester safety. Of course, the last thing anybody wants is for someone to get hurt. The whole point of this is, as the organizer said, is a peaceful protest. And I just read that message from the Fort Worth Police, but they said they are monitoring all peaceful protests that are happening today in the city of Fort Worth. So we know they're here somewhere. We know that if something were to happen, we know that they would make themselves known. And as soon as we see them, we will let you all know. But right now, we're not seeing too much of their presence. But again, we're seeing people, they're staying behind that line, but it's a very fine line, Casey. They're getting closer out there into that turn lane, which is a little concerning. But as you can tell, traffic is moving slowly. A lot of people honking, wanting to see the protest. Maybe some even chose to come this way so they could see the protest.
Well, Amelia, I was just going to say,
but of course, there is that concern.
Just looking at Burnett Park there in downtown Fort Worth on Google Maps just to get a sense of where that is. You're right in the heart of downtown, down the street from Bass Concert Hall, the Fort Worth Convention Center, the I-30-35 West interchange, and people need to bear that in mind. There are a lot of people that have come out not just to Fort Worth, Texas today, not just to Dallas, Texas today, but to Burleson, Sanger, Flower Mound, Kaufman, the list goes on and on. So motorists need to build some extra time in to get where they've got to go on this Saturday if they've got plans, places to be, and be careful. It doesn't take much for someone to step off the sidewalk there. You look down at your phone for just a second to check a text message, and boom, you've got an accident. So let's check back in with Fox 4's David Sintendry over at Dallas City Hall. We've been talking about the police presence, and David, I understand that you have an update in that regard.
Yeah, Casey, so when we spoke about 30 minutes ago, the protest was just getting underway, and I was telling you that we really didn't have a view of any Dallas police officers. That did not mean that they were not here. It just meant that they were, for the most part, leaving these protesters alone, and they were just not in our sight. You can see behind me the protest is still going strong. Thousands of people out here. It is a peaceful protest, but do want to point out that after we last talked to you, we noticed that Dallas police officers started to block off this intersection of Hervey and Young. So you got one police vehicle right here, and then over right at the intersection, not only do you have a handful of police vehicles just blocking it off, but you have City of Dallas Public Works dump trucks just blocking it off just to make things secure, because obviously a concern with any protest is that you might have someone who could potentially drive into a crowd, not to get too dark, but that is a reality that police are preparing for. So they're out here, but they are out here right now in an effort to keep people safe, just make sure that everything's going okay. So we have not seen any sort of altercations with anyone. We haven't seen any confrontations, any violence, nothing like that. It has remained peaceful, but did just want to give you guys an update on the police presence that we see over here now at the intersection. We'll see how this develops, because at some point these vehicles are going to have to move, because as I mentioned earlier, the organizers of this protest said in the second hour, which is about 30 minutes from now, there is going to be some sort of a march around downtown. We don't know which direction they're going. They did tell us it's going to be for about a mile or so, but there is going to be some sort of march. We don't know how many people will participate in it, but there are certainly thousands of people out here right now, and you got to think at least a good bit of them are going to take to the streets here in a little while. It'll be interesting to see if Dallas Police Department guides them through that march, or if they tell them to get back on the sidewalk, and they are only allowed on the sidewalk. Certainly this is a whole lot of people that it'd be really difficult to fit them all on one sidewalk area. You'd have to stretch it for a very, very long time. You would have to think it would spill over in the streets, but I can tell you, I was talking to a Dallas Police Department official just a couple of days ago, or I think it was yesterday actually, and they said a permit was not applied for this protest, but that doesn't mean that it had to have been. It was more of just an organic gathering at a public building. A permit was not needed for that. It's unclear whether or not a permit would be needed for an actual march around this area to have it blocked off. I don't know if police are just going to work with them and keep them safe, but that is just an unknown right now. What will happen when protesters go into the streets? Because remember, a couple nights ago, when in a different manner, a little more confrontational manner, when an somewhat unorganized group went into the streets outside of downtown, they were met with officers in riot gear and were told to stay back on the sidewalks. Officers were pleading with them, we want you to protest, we want you to be peaceful, but it has to be done on the sidewalk or in the park area that they were at. So here's another look at what's behind us. Again, what everyone is talking about out here is President Trump's immigration policy. They're upset with how he has been working with ICE. I do need to point out that Homeland Security data that has been put out online says that in the first 100 days of the president's administration, more than 150,000 illegal immigrants were arrested. And it was said by Homeland Security that more than 75% of those illegal immigrants had criminal records or had been arrested and had pending criminal charges. A lot of people, right or wrong, a lot of people are upset more so with the people who have minor infractions, whether it's speeding or ICE agents showing up to court and arresting people before due process has been had. So that's a big factor why a lot of people are out here at this No Kings protest. I know not too long ago I asked someone if they are okay with people being arrested for if they have violent crimes and if they are deported. And just one person from the crowd told me they are okay with that, but on the lesser things, not so much. So we still have speakers going on here at the protest. We have less than 30 minutes probably until it seems like this is going to be a march in the street. We'll check back with you here in a little bit. I don't know if you have any questions for us, Casey, just on what the mood's like out here or anything we're seeing, but feel free to ask.
Yeah, David, I was wondering, can't tell from the video or not, any other safety measures in place that maybe we can't see? You know, sometimes you go to these and they have chain link fence up to try and keep the crowds back. Have you seen anything like that? I know you talked about the dump trucks. Those are important when it comes to safety. Any fencing, K-rails, things to contain the crowd?
Yeah, nothing that we've seen. We can get another look behind us or in front of us at these dump trucks too, but nothing we've seen other than that. We see 2 dump trucks here at the intersection of Hervey and Young, a handful of police officers, and over on the opposite side we see more police vehicles. So again, they don't want anyone being stupid and driving up here toward the crowd. You know, no one wants something like that to happen. But no fencing. We haven't seen any officers even mingling in the crowd. They're really just staying far back from all this, letting the protesters do what they're going to do. I will tell you, we know they're on standby. We know they're communicating with each other, that being the police department, because something that happened just a few minutes ago wasn't violent. It was just an elderly man walked by and he actually tripped on the ground. Oh, here we go. Look at this. This is interesting. But an elderly man tripped on the ground and fell, and then out of nowhere, you just see a handful of Dallas police officers just like swarm to help him. I didn't know where they came from. So that was within like a minute of the person falling. So we know they're around, we know they're monitoring, they're just staying back, and I think they're intentionally not wanting to be seen because they don't want to be a distraction.
Yeah, the idea is that they are doing their jobs well when you don't even really know that it's going on. They always say that about the airport. You know, TSA workers, the air traffic controllers, you in theory shouldn't hear about them. They have very important jobs, but you shouldn't hear about them because they're running silently in the background, keeping people safe. I always find it interesting at these events to kind of look up and glance on the rooftops, because you can no doubt bet there are snipers up on the roof. They have eyes up there as well, trying to keep a close eye on this crowd, because David, as we know, crowds can change in a hurry.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, great idea. I'm looking around right now, just seeing if we see anyone on the rooftops. Of course, to the right of us is the library. Don't see anyone up there. We don't see anyone on any of the buildings around us. But again, they know what they're doing. They know how to be discreet, and they don't want to be seen. So
and obviously,
we know that they're all around here. Even on
David.
Monday, during the protest that some might say got a little out of hand at the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge, there were maybe a few dozen police officers, but when things really started to get intense and more confrontational, things getting thrown, a swarm of officers just flooded in. I mean, they were ready to go, and that was on Monday when there really wasn't a whole lot of preparation. They've been talking about this protest really all week. We know the police chief has met with community leaders who are involved in this protest, so I'm sure they're ready.
And David, I think it's no coincidence that these in North Texas are largely being held in the afternoon. When it's daylight out, when the sun isn't down, that is when we have seen things go south. Not saying that they can't go south during the day, things can't jump off when the sunlight is out, but I think the timing with these very strategic, don't you?
100%, yeah. People who want peaceful protests typically want to organize them in the day. We usually see those more violent protests at night. Again, not to keep bringing up Monday, but that was something that happened once the sun went down. It started off as a peaceful protest, but once the sun went down, it got a bit out of hand. This from 12 to 2, it's hot outside, so you know, I think just being out here in the heat is zapping a lot of energy from people, but we haven't got any indication that anyone out here wants to do anything but just take part in a peaceful protest. I will just kind of describe the crowd out here. So typically at a lot of protests, I think it's safe to say you see more younger people, not exclusively of course, but maybe a majority or a large sample of younger people. Here, there are plenty of young people, but I was talking with my photographer just a little bit ago. We noticed a lot of people who I would describe as of grandparent age. So a lot of grown adults, people with a lot of life experience who are out here on their Saturday afternoon. You don't know.
We must demand accountability for this administration's crime.
Well, David, sorry the audio there has dropped out again with one of the speakers that you've got going on there, but excellent reporting and perspective from Fox 4's David Centendry, who is in the thick of things. Let's go ahead and listen in to what this woman is saying at the podium there at the Dallas City Hall protest.
DFW.
Greetings. My name is Red. I think so. Everyone hear me? Okay.
Right on it.
This good?
Put your lips like on the mic.
On the mic. All right, I'll be kissing it. Greetings. My name is Red, and I have been dealing with health issues my entire life. Greetings. My name is Red, and I have been dealing with health issues my entire life. I was unfortunately born to anti-vaxxers, which led me to contract a deadly disease. That disease nearly killed me and left me with lifelong health issues, reducing my ability to do certain hobbies and causing me to have coughing fits so severe I felt as if I might die. Despite their best efforts, I'm still alive and I'm still autistic. Beyond that, over the last 10 months, I have suffered multiple health complications, some of which led me to miss multiple days of work or be forced to work constant or severe pain. Every few months, it's a new injury. Every day, I wonder, will this be the pain that turns into something more? While I currently do not know the exact source of these health issues, I can confidently say that the work I do is contributing to the frequency and severity of them. The effects of my job caused me to need medical attention. So sorry. The effects of my job caused me to need medical attention, but I cannot leave the job because it provides said medical attention, an endless cycle of an abusive system. I'm in my mid-20s. Between my physical state, having little to no family, and being denied an education, a story for another day, but the short version is, in this state, you are not required to provide proof of homeschooling. Along with many other disadvantages in life, I was scared for my ability to survive. But now, with this current administration, I'm absolutely terrified. This is without even going into things like being told by my work doctor that my physical therapy would be covered and then having it denied when I was nearly done with it. The thousands of dollars I need in dental care due to my parents' severe neglect and my mental health care needs. I haven't been able to find a job which I'm qualified for that would meet my physical needs and would pay a livable wage. Constantly missing work is worse than missing out on a single week's paycheck. Every time I miss work, I come this much closer to missing out of the days I'm allowed to be absent. This will eventually cause me to lose my job altogether. It costs hundreds of dollars each time I need to get a doctor's note, which my workplace only accepts for up to 3 days at a time, regardless of the doctor's recommendations. My quality of life has also been impacted. I use all of my energy just to get through the workday. I cannot keep up with most of the chores at home. I am slowly finding myself back in the holder situation that I experienced as a child under my disabled mother's roof. Physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, this isn't sustainable. This administration wants to live like kings while we die like peasants. dark ages. We have vaccines despite Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s best efforts to prevent them. Don't like that guy. Advanced medicine and technologies, as well as decades of research for people to live long, healthy lives, yet we lock it behind a paywall and let those who cannot afford it pay the price with their lives. They're proposing cuts of over $700 billion to Medicaid over the next decade, while spending an estimated $25 to $45 million on this parade to stroke egos instead of using it to save those lives. Before I leave you, I want to remind everyone out there, and especially my fellow disabled folks, that despite society's expectations, you are not defined by the work you do, but the person you are. Your hobbies, passions, values, creativity, thoughts, desires, goals, and everything else within you, regardless of what that looks like, is enough on its own. Life is a gift, and gifts aren't earned, they're appreciated. Thank you very much. Happy Pride Month. Stay strong and keep fighting.
Keep a lookout for our neighbors, our community, and make sure there's a lot of people passing out, and there's a medic tent right over there to my right. So if you see someone, let someone know and let them report and come over there. But I just wanted to see any first-time protesters here, raise your hand. Oh my God. Wow. And I see a lot of different communities. We're all diverse here. Thank you all for being here, for showing up. Oh man, we're all here to fight this authoritarian government because they're breaking the damn rules of the basic Constitution. And we're about to show them what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like. There we go. Y para toda la gente latina aquí, estamos aquí representando. Gracias por estar aquí. ¿Cuántos de ustedes es su primera vez protestando aquí? Suben las manos. Oh, gracias. Gracias. Todos estamos unidos, juntos. No importa de dónde son, de México, Venezuela, Palestina, Honduras, either from America. We're all here together to fight one thing, the authoritarian government. And I want to show you all. My name is Azo, and I'm with El Movimiento DFW, and I'm shaking because it's freaking hot out here, but I'm here to fight. And I want to introduce to you someone very important to the community, and she's with Vecinos Unidos. We're out here fighting in the courthouses, and I want her to speak more. Give it up for Noemi!
With a chant. Closer. Okay, Selena style. Right up in the mic. All right. I didn't bring my red lipstick. All right. Hey, little kings. Oh, medic. We need a medic over to the right side of the stage if you're facing the stage. Guys, remember to please drink water. Please hydrate. We are sweating by the pound, so please stay hydrated. Do we have the medics on route? Okay. All right, we're gonna allow them to respond. If you see folks with a vest cutting their way through, please make way for them to get to the folks that they need to get to. All right. the chant. Ain't no kings, ain't no saviors. We protect our own neighbors. Okay? One more time. Ain't no kings, ain't no saviors. We protect our own neighbors. Who keeps us safe? We keep us safe. Who's got the power? We got the power. What kind of power? People power. What kind of power? People power. Okay, buenas tardes, Dallas. My name is Noemi, and I'm here with Vecinos Unidos DFW. We are a Chicana-led grassroots project of volunteers, neighbors. Vecinos Unidos DFW means Neighbors United Dallas-Fort Worth, and that is what I see when I look at the crowd today. Neighbors that came together. At Vecinos, we are doing the work that our elected officials refuse to do. We are bringing truth, protection, and resources directly to our people. We are out every week at the courthouse doing observations, block walking, handing out Know Your Rights signs to our neighbors face to face. We are talking to them, hearing their fears, their questions, and their anger. And inside of the courthouse, we are no longer just observing hearings. No, we are there to bear witness to human trafficking. When we began our courthouse observation, it was about bearing witness to the process. It was about sitting with families who have no one to stand with them. Immigrants who are there following the process, doing it the right way. It's no longer just about that. It's about documenting the thugs that call themselves ICE, waiting and lurking outside of the courtroom door. And they make a mockery of our justice system.
Okay, you are listening to live Fox local streaming coverage here on KDFW. I'm Casey Stiegel in Dallas as we continue to cover the No Kings protests across North Texas on this Saturday afternoon, June 14th. We have thousands of people that are gathering all across North Texas, in Dallas, and also in Fort Worth, where we have Amelia Jones. Fox 4's Amelia Jones is in Fort Worth at Burnett Park, where the festivities are underway. And Amelia, about another hour or so to go. They run until 2 there, right?
That's right, Casey, and more people have started to show up. We're hearing more cars go by honking, more cheering, and we've even moved further down on 7th Street here just to give a little bit of a new perspective. And as we were moving down, I spotted Kelly and Haven Doss here. They are a mother and daughter who came out to the protest, and they've agreed to talk to us a little bit. And so, Kelly, I want to start with you. Obviously, there are No Kings protests going on across the country, including here in the DFW area. So for you, why was it important for you to say, we are going to spend our Saturday afternoon here at this protest? Why are you here?
I feel like this is just a big moment in history where our rights and our freedoms are being under attack. And I am very concerned for the people of this whole country. I'm concerned because of deportation of people who have not had due process. I'm just really concerned, and I feel like I needed my voice to be heard.
Okay, and you brought your 14-year-old daughter Haven with you. You're both holding signs. You are at the very edge of the street here. So I gotta ask, she's just 14. She's obviously experiencing this, knowing what that's like to use the power of her voice. You know, why did you want to bring her with you today?
You know, I feel like it's important, even as women, to be able to stand up and make our voices heard. Our rights are being stripped away as well. She's a young woman, and she needs to be aware that she can speak her mind. She has a voice, and this country is made for her.
Okay, and now I want to ask, tell me about the atmosphere. So far, things have remained peaceful. We are starting to see, there's Fort Worth police riding their bikes here. But talk to me a little bit about the atmosphere as more people are arriving. There's got to be thousands here lining the street in Burnett Park.
You know, I'm really surprised about the turnout. Actually, this is my first protest ever. But it's very hopeful, I feel, you know, that we can actually make a change, that we can stand up to the government that's in power, and we can make a difference.
Yeah, and Haven, I gotta ask you, you know, you're 14 years old. It's okay if this is a little overwhelming, but obviously you're here with your mom. You know, what has your experience been like so far?
I'm just really happy that so many people feel the same way that we do. And I'm really happy that, like someone said that we only need 3% of the population to stand up to make a change. And I just feel like that might happen. I'm just really happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so did you guys come out at the start here? Are you planning to stay until 2 or however long it goes?
Absolutely. We're here from start to finish.
Okay. Well, the Dosses, thank you guys so much. I was going to say, your signs, gosh, how long did that take you to make here?
2 evenings. Yeah, we actually made double-sided. So Congress, do your job, stop the bill. We want that beautiful bill to fail. Choose justice over convenience. That was from Mahmoud Khalil. He wrote it to his son in his letter yesterday. And choose justice over struggle is sweeter than life without dignity. That was also something that he said. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly. We are Christians, but we believe that Jesus would not want what is happening in government to be happening. And no kings in the United States.
All right. Well, ladies, thanks so much for just giving me a minute of your time here, and you guys stay safe as this protest continues. Thank you, guys. Well, Casey, that was just a little snippet of hearing why somebody decided to show up at this protest. And that's not the only, you know, families that we see here. Obviously, you see Kelly with her 14-year-old daughter, but we see lots of families here. It seems like we even see grandparents here with potentially grandchildren and their children. Things are getting louder and more crowded here on West 7th Street. You heard in the middle of our interview that I did see a line of Fort Worth police officers on bicycles just right in front of the crowd here. Did not seem like they did anything. They didn't ask the crowd to be pushed back. They didn't interact with them, but that is the first presence that we've seen of them here at this protest in downtown Fort Worth. For those who are not familiar, we're at Burnett Park, which is really in the heart of downtown Fort Worth. We're right off of the highway. We're right by the Fort Worth Convention Center. This is happening along West 7th Street at the intersection of Lamar Street. People are lining the streets. We're hearing some music similar to what David is seeing in Dallas. However, there are no speakers. People are really just cheering, chanting, holding their signs, just like Kelly and Haven are doing on the street here. And they're trying to get people to honk. And every single time cars honk, it's an encouragement for them. So you do hear that cheering. But gosh, we were up a couple steps just at a building here. And then from our vantage point, Burnett Park is packed with people. I would not be surprised if there are over 1,000 people here, and more just keep coming. This protest is scheduled to go until 2 p.m. There is no march involved, at least from what we're aware of, from what organizers gave us in their information. But as we know, protests like this, sometimes they take on a life of their own. So if a march does occur, obviously we'll keep you updated and we'll get that to our viewers at home. But so far things have remained peaceful, but we are starting to see Fort Worth police show their presence here. We knew they were here, but now they have showed the protesters of, hey, we're in the area. They're monitoring things, and obviously we will continue to monitor things here as well. Casey, I'll send it back to you in the studio though, and let me know if you have any questions further as to what I'm seeing.
All right, I just checked the Fox 4 weather app. It is 90 degrees there in Fort Worth, but with the humidity, the real feel 100 degrees. So I know that just adds to the misery out there. So it's important that people stay hydrated. Fox 4's Amelia Jones live in Fort Worth. Amelia, we're going to reset here at the top of the hour, and we will join you again here momentarily as we check back in on this National Day of Protest. Amelia, thank you. All right, it is 12:58 in
so we can talk to people, but we know the organizers have had different speakers coming in and out at the front of it. This is the first time that we've seen people starting to walk on the sidewalks. So it certainly looks like they're gathering to start getting this crowd to walk around, but it doesn't appear anyone is really kind of marching in the street yet. It seems like they're all getting, actually Mel, if you want to come off this way with me for a bit, we can get a good view for our viewers. So here outside of City Hall, you can see at the intersection of Irvay right now and Young, that's what you're looking at, where we talked earlier about Public Works and Dallas police vehicles just blocking off the intersection. Behind us on the other way, if we turn around, you can see that there are a line of people on the sidewalk over here starting to walk. And that's stretching about at least 2 blocks right now, people filled up on that sidewalk. We don't know the route that they are planning to walk in, but people are starting to file out here of City Hall right when we expected. Earlier we were told it would happen sometime in the second hour of the protest, and here we are right at the beginning of the second hour. So we'll see how this progresses as things continue, but man, I gotta tell you, it definitely feels like way more than 1,300 people out here. So I don't know if there's any way to get specific with that, but it certainly feels like there's at least 2,000 people or so out here, maybe more. But we haven't seen anything more from police than what we brought to you in the last report, and that was just that police are monitoring. They're at intersections, just wanting to make sure that no one, drives toward this crowd, no one does anything disruptive. We have seen a couple instances of people who, might need medical aid and police rushing to them, but we have not ran into any situations where police are having to escort anyone out or having to arrest people. Actually, I believe police told us just a little bit ago they have no reports of any incidents here, so of course that's a good thing. I think we're going to start walking down this way with the protesters and just see where they're going and try to just, see what the ultimate goal is.
Yeah, that's the brilliant part of the technology that we've got, right? It's a love and hate relationship with this technology. Back in the day, we had to pull a really long cable and connect a camera to that to be able to bring viewers live pictures. Now we essentially have these things called live views, and folks, they are really the size of a backpack, if not even smaller. I mean, hey, you can go live from your phone, right, on Instagram and all the rest. But now we've got these very mobile devices that allow us to take the live picture with you. So that's what you see David Santendri and his photographer Mel doing there. They've got the live view on the go, and they're walking there through the streets of Dallas. David, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you your heat index. Amelia's is 100. Yours is 101 in Dallas, so a little bit warmer. I think it feels like it's more than 1,300 people, and it probably feels like it's warmer than 101.
Yeah, I can tell you, I've said this to many people before, I am a psycho. I am one of those people who loves the heat, so when it's triple digits, I'm like, all right, let's get outside and go for a run. So I welcome this. I think it's the fact that I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio as a young child, and I was deprived of sunshine and heat for about 10 years of my life. So I'm just catching up on lost time right now. So I actually don't mind this.
I saw you just walking past an ambulance, David, and that is, in all seriousness, an issue. We heard at one of the events earlier someone calling out into the crowd for a medic. When you're talking about crowds of that size, you're talking about how hot it is. The sun is beating down. Obviously, parking isn't the greatest. Some people really have to take a hike to get to the event itself. So there can be medical emergencies, and that's part of this coverage and making sure that people are having their voices heard, but they're also safe.
100%, and that's what that ambulance, I mean, it's there for, any sort of preventive measure and just to be on standby, but we did, when we walked by it, saw a young woman sitting on the back of it just drinking water. You could tell that she may have gotten a bit dehydrated, so that's definitely a concern for people out here. The organizers know that because we have seen just cases and cases of water just brought out to corners, brought out to the front of the protest, and they're just saying, hey, this is complimentary, free for anyone who needs it. Actually, as we're walking by right now, over to my right, you can see people dipping into a cooler for free waters that someone's announcing. So everyone, you can't not be aware of the heat right now just because you're feeling it so much. But but people, I think that just shows that this is an organized protest. This has been planned, as we mentioned, for quite some time, and they are out here with, water, people have megaphones, and they were ready for this heat.
Organized, but also grassroots, right? Because, for example, you don't really know where you're walking. Once you got there, you got boots on the ground today and started news gathering, you learned that there was talk of some type of a march or a walk in the second half of this. And so, again, that's where we are now at 1:06. This started at noon. Most of the major events here in North Texas started at noon and run until 2. But they're also fluid, and so you don't know where you're going. There's no official mapped out route, but folks are just walking.
Yeah, I think there is going to be some sort of mapped out route. That's just the gist I got from the organizers that I was talking to earlier, but I asked them for that route and they did not want to tell me, citing safety concerns. That was their right. They just didn't want us to get that information, and if there was someone who wanted to, do something to harm the people marching, they didn't want them to be there to, have a head start. So they would not reveal the route, but it does seem like there was a route that they wanted to walk. But now, it's just one of those fluid things right now where I don't know if the people walking here are a part of that and this is the beginning of it, or if this is just an organic movement that started of some people walking and more an official route is going to start here in a little bit. But you have some people who are still lingering over at City Hall, quite a bit. You have some people across the street, some people are just hanging out in the street. So definitely, somewhat of a grassroots feel to it, but we know that this was an efforted protest from an organization that we don't know a whole lot about, but is organizing hundreds of protests across the country.
Yeah, the 50-51 movement, a group of people who stand for democracy and against what they call the authoritarian actions of the current administration. 50-51 stands for 50 protests, 50 states, one movement. The No Kings events is the other organizer of this. Some of the language they use on their website: on June 14th, we rise up. In America, we don't do kings. They've defied our courts, deported Americans, disappeared people off the streets, attacked our civil rights, and slashed our services. The corruption has gone too far. I'm quoting here, of course, from the website. No thrones, no crowns, no kings. And that's the gist of this, right? It's not just immigration, but you heard a woman talking a little bit earlier about struggling with health issues and having no health insurance. This is really a breaking point. People are reaching a breaking point in this country. People are struggling to make ends meet. They're worrying about how they're going to pay to send their kids to school and pay to keep a roof over their heads. And whether it's economic policies, social policies, as it pertains to immigration, a lot of people are really upset. And so this is the opportunity for people to get out and exercise their First Amendment rights. That's what makes this country great. And get out there and do this in a peaceful, meaningful way so the message is spread. Right, David?
Yeah, Casey, you're right. And obviously our country is divided, but that's nothing new. Typically during election years, everything is, 51-49 or something like that. We have a divided country. That's, just the way that our two-party system works. You have people on different sides of different issues, right or wrong. And what we usually see at these protests, there's the jumping off point. So a lot of people, protest because they might be upset with, in this case, President Donald Trump's immigration policy, but it always turns into usually something more than that. Like, for instance, we've heard people talking on Monday at that protest, we heard people talking about their push for socialism, which is obviously very controversial, but that's something that people at that protest were pushing toward, and they weren't just talking about immigration. Then you heard speakers talking about the Palestinian-Israel conflict, and completely different issue than the ICE policy, but you usually get protests and then different policies that are in line with certain views that organizers have usually start to trickle in. So that's not uncommon. We have seen that here today, but yeah, it just seems like it's an opportunity for people to voice the concerns that they have. I will say it does seem like it's starting to spread more away from City Hall right now. We're going to try to see if we can maybe get down there a little bit. Sorry, just trying to get a lay of the land, Casey, while we're
No,
out
that's
here.
fine.
This is just fluid and yeah.
David, while you do that, want to obviously point out while you look for that, and we can let you go if you need to. Just let us know.
We can hang tight for a bit. Yeah.
Okay, but don't want to drag the event itself. And you're right. The idea of a divisive country is nothing new, and divisive issues. And we should point out that the people organizing these events across the nation today have always pointed out that safety is important for everyone. Some of these people have attended de-escalation training with the ACLU. They have been straight up from the beginning honest with people about bringing water, sunscreen, not to bring anything that can be mistaken as a weapon, because their whole message is lost if something goes awry.
100%. I can tell you, I do want to give you an update right now on what we're looking at. I mentioned earlier that we didn't really have any counter protesters. There are a few right here. More so, they're not necessarily countering immigration arguments, but they are spreading more religious messages. And there are some people who are confronting these people who have a different type of message. And Dallas police officers, you can tell, are on standby. One is right there, it looks like, at the front of the group. We got a couple here to my right, 3 or 4 of them just hanging back. But this is very normal. This is nothing, to sound an alarm about. We see this at protests. We see sometimes people coming out here and just spend. Oh, you guys can walk through. It's okay. It's okay. So yeah, this is nothing to sound an alarm about, but just one little thing happening here at this intersection.
So I'm just looking online here, some 15,000 people turning out down in Houston this afternoon. So again, if we go back out to a 30,000-foot level and give you a big picture, not just here in the DFW Metroplex, not just here in Texas, but across the country, from New York to California, there are cities, big cities to little towns today that are holding peaceful demonstrations, protesting some of the policies of President Donald Trump's administration, the White House administration, and specifically as it pertains to immigration enforcement in some of these cities. What really escalated all of this seemed to be when reports emerged that there were plainclothes ICE agents that were hanging out at immigration courts, at federal immigration courts in Los Angeles, and were detaining people as they showed up for their court hearings. That is something that also happened here at the Federal Immigration Court in Dallas. I personally spoke to an immigration lawyer who saw that happen, and some people in the community believe that that is a legal trap in a lot of ways, that these are people that are trying to do it right. They may be in the country illegally, they may have crossed the border and come into the United States in an unlawful way, but they are contributing members of society. They pay taxes and they contribute to the base, and so two very, very clear sides on one contentious issue that's being discussed. Let's head over now back to Fort Worth. David Centendry live for us in Dallas. David, thank you for being with us and indulging me here with some discussions about the state of affairs in the country at the moment. And I'm going to shut up and let you listen and take in some of the sights and sounds from the protest demonstration event in Fort Worth right now. All right, we are going to go back to Dallas now. You're looking at Sky 4 pictures. What a crowd there, starting to move into the streets of downtown Dallas, and I believe that's Irvay Street, if I'm not mistaken. But this event started at noon there at Dallas City Hall, so just about an hour and 20 minutes ago. And then our own David Centendry had heard from some of the organizers and folks on the ground that the idea was for the latter half of the protest until 2 o'clock, that they are going to, in fact, do a march. And that's exactly what we're seeing transpire right now. This is Irvay Street. Thank you for that, Matt. Again, viewers, apologize for talking to the control room. It's a little bit raw and unfiltered here, not like the traditional newscasts that you're used to seeing on the traditional television screen. But that's how it goes with live television here, as it's coming in raw and unfiltered and happening live on this Saturday afternoon. A very hot, muggy day across North Texas, and you are looking at what appears to be now thousands of people that are leaving Dallas City Hall and starting to take to the streets, and they are going to be marching. Not clear at this point where they are going specifically, if they have an end point in mind, or if they are just doing this sort of on the impromptu side of things, and they're just going to walk around for a little bit and then wrap things up and put a bow on it at 2 o'clock. Or, of course, we could see these go past 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they could go longer than the time they were originally scheduled to go. That, again, one of the theories as to why this was being held in the afternoon, so there's not as much opportunity for mayhem. But there you see now the front end of the group that's marching there. I'm trying to read that street sign there, can't tell, but they're marching through the streets, and of course that means traffic is shut down. And so that's Jackson Street there. Thank you, Matt. Jackson Street, they're marching across right now. Irvay marching across Jackson Street as we speak in downtown Dallas. So obviously, if people are out and about and you don't know that these are going on, and you're wondering why it is a parking lot on the streets around and in and around downtown Dallas, this is why, because you have a very large demonstration marching through the streets of downtown Dallas right now. Much more subdued over in Fort Worth at Burnett Park. Things seem a little bit less organized there, a little bit more grassroots, if you will. As you heard, just lots of cars honking as they drive up West 7th Street down there in the heart of downtown, not far from Bass Concert Hall. But as we suspected, Dallas is where the action is, and that's what you're seeing right now from these live pictures. I want to point out that our assignment desk, our intrepid folks working in the assignment desk, checking in with folks at Dallas Fire Rescue and with Fort Worth Fire Rescue about any injuries or any heat-related calls. And once we get numbers on those, we'll keep you updated on that. But that's something that we're mindful of, and we've been talking about that as it is pretty hot out there, a hot summer afternoon for an event like this, for people to be not only outside in the sunshine, but also marching. And so it's difficult where David Centendry is right now to see at City Hall. He says it doesn't appear to be super organized, but the march is headed north on Irvay toward Main Street in downtown Dallas. So people are holding signs and they are chanting. And as David pointed out, you've got people from all walks of life there. I've seen children in some of these pictures. I have seen white people. I've seen brown people. I have seen old people, young people, a pretty nice slice of society represented there, and what David and his photographer referred to as more grandparent age. I don't know what that means, but I think I get it. But he said that, you know, typically these crowds are filled with people of a younger generation, really wanting to get out there and create change in the world and spark change and make a difference in the world. And he said that the crowd wasn't as young as he was thinking, that the folks gathering in Dallas were more of a grandparent's age. They're turning on to Main Street right now. You can see this is quickly growing, and with it, we also should point out, grows the headaches associated with containing all of this, and when it comes to policing. It's one thing when you've got a large group gathered on the plaza there in front of Dallas City Hall and everyone's sort of in one location primarily, but now when you've got people on the move, mobile, going from point A to point B, that creates more soft targets and other things that members of law enforcement worry about when it comes to things like these. So you are watching Fox live streaming coverage this afternoon of the No Kings protest happening in downtown Dallas, in downtown Fort Worth, other points across North Texas and around the country for that matter. Philadelphia, by the way, is where the organization is based, and Philadelphia was sort of the hub of this event today. Their flagship march and rally was held at Love Park from 12 noon to 3 p.m. Eastern. And this, of course, has all been to counter the military parade in Washington, D.C. A lot of pomp and circumstance with artillery and military personnel marching through the streets of our nation's capital to celebrate the Army's anniversary, but also President Trump's birthday and Flag Day. So this is the results, a nationwide day of action as people marching through downtown Dallas. I'm not sure if David Centendry is on the move or if he is in a position to check in. Okay, so he is moving, which I suspected because he was starting there at City Hall where things began, and now he's trying to get up and ahead of the crowd so he can find a good place to plop down and bring us additional live pictures. Boy, oh boy, that is quite some crowd there, ladies and gentlemen. Last check, we had a Dallas police figure of some 1,300. That number is definitely grown. David Centendry is back with us. I see the camera moving around, shaking around. We're live on the ground, folks. What do you see, David?
Hey, Casey. We are walking up Irvay Street right now here in downtown Dallas, approaching Main Street. And I can tell you, there are definitely more than 1,300 people out here. There are a lot of people taking over this downtown area. This is the march that we had gotten a heads up about just before the protest started. You can hear that cheering as people are starting to enter toward Main Street right now. It's a very energetic crowd out here. As far as the signage goes, I got to tell you, a whole lot of them, I mean, we could, it's been a minute since I've seen this many signs at a protest. There are a whole lot of them out here. You've probably noticed the American flags out here. That is intentional. I know there was chatter amongst people in different groups saying, hey, a lot of times at immigration protests, we bring out the Mexican flag and the flag for Mexico, and that has been controversial. Some people wanting to use the U.S. flag more so, hey, we want to make change in our country. So it was intentional for people to bring out specific U.S. flags this go around. I think we're going to pause here for a minute and just show people walking by. I apologize for any expletives. It has been a peaceful protest in the form of nonviolence, but we certainly see and hear a lot of curse words and foul language being pointed at the president. Stuff that, again, we're going to do our best not to let get into air, but there is a lot of anger from people out here pointed toward the president, so it's almost impossible to avoid apologies for that right there. But it's unclear where they're going to be going, how far along they're going to be going through downtown. Again, we weren't given the route for this, but right now we're approaching Main Street as people start shouting, "No justice, no peace." Want to maintain that we have not seen anyone get out of line as far as any physical violence, but with a crowd this large, we know Dallas PD doesn't necessarily want people taking over streets, but I don't know how much you can do at this point with this many people taking over this area of downtown. It would be pretty hard to break up if that's what they wanted to. We don't know what their official plan is. We did request a sit-down interview with Dallas's police chief on Thursday and Friday, trying to just get preparations in order, try to get an idea for what they want to see happen, but we were not provided those opportunities after multiple requests. So, and again, they like to keep that stuff close to the vest sometimes for security reasons, but just saying, we tried to reach out and try to get some sort of a plan, but we did not get that opportunity. The protest is taking a left here on Main Street in downtown. And we can just kind of let it breathe from this corner for a minute, because I think this is a pretty good visual. If you look down Main Street, that way, it goes on for several blocks. And then if you turn to our left, you can see that for several blocks back towards City Hall, this thing is still ripping. I'm not sure if we have a Sky 4 aerial view right now overhead that can just show how many blocks it's covering. I can't make it out right now, but it's certainly a very large walk right now. The chant right now in the crowd is "Vote him out," talking about President Trump. It is important to point out, you know, a majority of Americans did vote for Donald Trump. So do a majority of Americans support what his policies have been for immigration since he took office? Obviously, immigration was a huge topic, one of probably the most talked about topics that was up for discussion during debates and the whole season leading up to the election. So Donald Trump is the president, of course, right now of the United States, and a majority of Americans did vote for him. Whether or not they agree with the policies that have gone into effect since he took over, that's a good question. So I have not seen any people at the protest. I'm not saying there aren't any, but I have not seen anyone with a sign that says they were, you know, maybe someone who voted for the president back in November and now they've had a change of heart and they want a do-over. I haven't seen anyone like that. Not saying they aren't out here, but I think that's a really interesting angle to look for. Is there anyone who was in favor of putting this administration into office and now have they had a change of heart? But yeah, just trying to always explore all sides as people say vote him out. You know, this is the elected president who people put into office.
No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
Okay, so we're just getting an updated number from Dallas Police Department saying that the current crowd size there in downtown Dallas now estimated to be 10,000. That is much more accurate. That's more reflective of what we're seeing there. 10,000. So quite a big showing today in downtown Dallas. The question is, in 30 minutes or so, when this is all scheduled to wrap up, are these people going to get in their cars and go home and call it a day, or are they going to continue to protest beyond the hours that they originally had this on the calendar for? But latest information coming to us at 1:30 in the afternoon from Dallas Police. 10,000 is the crowd size there in the streets of downtown Dallas. As you take a live look at Fox 4 images on the right-hand side of your screen, David Centendry's live picture is on the upper left-hand side of your screen, and you can just see how many are out there in those streets. The leading edge of the crowd stopped just a little shy of where David was set up trying to go. But then they turned back south back towards City Hall. So we don't know if they're just going to make a big loop and then they're going to go back to City Hall and kind of finish things up there or not. But Ladies and gentlemen, we are just watching this unfold along with you. Hopefully, if you're watching us, you're doing so in the air conditioning. If you're in Texas, it is a hot one out there. Heat indexes of more than 100 degrees in all of the cities where people are gathering to have their voices heard this afternoon. Again, not just in Dallas, not just in Fort Worth, the Lone Star State, but around the country for that matter on this National Day of Action. And as David Centendry pointed out, immigration is frankly what probably got Donald Trump elected to the White House, that and his economic policies. But so many people were tired after 4 years of a Biden White House, when many argued that the border was wide open and that just anybody could come in and that there were no real repercussions for doing so. And people were upset about that. Then we started to see a bit of a crime problem in some of the areas where migrants were being sent to be housed in places like New York and in other holding facilities. And so the president largely ran on cleaning things up and making sure that the border was closed and making sure that those who came in illegally were deported. So that is exactly what many would argue is playing out, and what we're seeing is what he said that he was going to do on the campaign trail. All too often people yell at politicians and complain at politicians for not following through on their campaign rhetoric, and it looks like Donald Trump has done the opposite and is in fact making true on some of the promises that he made, and that has upset a lot of people, and that is why people are in the streets this afternoon across America. Fox 4's Amelia Jones back with us in Fort Worth. Amelia, how are things where you are now?
Hi, Casey. We have moved further down West 7th Street. We're now on Burnett Street and West 7th, this intersection. Protesters have also taken over this grassy median area here. It's kind of a triangle. You have 6th Street over to my left, and then you have 7th Street, and this is in the heart of downtown Fort Worth. So far, things have remained peaceful. We saw Fort Worth police patrol on bikes, and I got a chance to speak with the Fort Worth Police PIO, who told me that is all you're going to see. As long as this protest stays peaceful, all Fort Worth police, their presence will be on bikes. So we're not going to see any large squad cars. We haven't seen any police officers hop off those bikes and just stand at the corner or stand amongst those protesters. And again, so far things have remained peaceful. I do have to say, more people have started to gather here. So gosh, I can only show you, this vantage point of the corner, but it goes all the way up to West 7th Street and Lamar Street, that intersection, and then it goes all the way down. I have to say, there are at least 1,000 people here, maybe even more. A lot of people have been coming up to ask me, do you know how many people are here today? And I asked Fort Worth Police that, the PIO, and he couldn't give me an exact number yet. I've also been trying to connect with the organizers for this protest. I haven't been able to connect with them yet. From what people are telling me, further in the park, Burnett Park, that's where people were told to gather here today for the protest. There is somebody on a loudspeaker, talking to others who are gathered in front of him. But there's no stage, there's no podium, and also people have not started to march at all. This protest, the information that we got from organizers, it was not supposed to be a march, and we are getting into the last 30 minutes of this scheduled protest. It started at noon and was supposed to go until 2 p.m. Casey, as you've been talking, we'll kind of see the way things are going, and now that we have some cloud cover, and so it feels a lot nicer here. We're getting that breeze, so the weather has actually gotten a little bit better. I could see people staying out here much longer than 2 p.m. We have been talking about the weather, so there are people out here giving water bottles to each other. cold towels, we've seen fans. Also talked to a couple people who are kind of coming and going, taking breaks. They say we'll be back, or they got here at the beginning. And just the crowd in general. We see all generations, all walks of life here. We see a lot of different flags, a lot of homemade signs. And this protest really hasn't had a lull since it started at noon. But the safety portion of this, I know it can be concerning when we have people lining the streets. We have not seen any accidents. We haven't seen anybody try to stop traffic. It seems like people are waiting, and the honking you hear is what those protesters actually, I believe, want. That honking is encouragement for them. After people honk, we hear them cheer. So it's not honking for them to, get out of the way, or I'm about to hit you. It really is, and it appears as people have their phones, we see drivers smiling. I believe those honks are an encouragement of this protest. And as I was talking to folks, they told me, hey, you gotta go further down, even past Burnett Park here, because that's how far the protest goes. I mean, people are just trying to line the streets of downtown Fort Worth as far as they can go. And so this has been going on, just really what you see. There have been some collective chants here and there, but the honking, people raising those flags, raising those signs, this has been going on since noon. And for those who might not be familiar with the Fort Worth area, so Burnett Park, it's really in the heart of downtown Fort Worth. We're very close to the Fort Worth Convention Center. We're right off of the highway here. And I did get a chance to talk to a mom and daughter. A mom, this is her first protest, she said, and she felt so strongly about the topic here that she needed to bring her 14-year-old daughter out to show her that you can use your voice and you can stand up, and there is strength in numbers here. And I think that's a sentiment a lot of people feel as we cover these protests here. It's, getting their voices collectively together, because you might be able to ignore one voice, but I mean, hey, are you going to be able to ignore thousands of voices? And, I think that's really the idea here. But so far in Fort Worth, things have remained peaceful. If you're just joining us, we have seen Fort Worth police monitor this downtown area. They've been patrolling all throughout Burnett Park on bikes. And Fort Worth police said that is all you're going to see as long as this protest remains peaceful. The PIO also added to me that they are using their intelligence fusion center, which is a way that they can really monitor things in terms of other protests that are happening throughout Tarrant County and throughout maybe some other areas of Fort Worth. So they're really trying to utilize all of their options and all of their measures that they have to keep things under control. But yeah, so far this has been what we're seeing. More people gathering, more people, moving throughout West 7th Street. We have not seen this crowd die down at all. We're starting to see some people walk here on the sidewalk. I'm not sure if they're just going to walk around the park or if this is going to start maybe a march here. You can see those signs moving as people are moving on the sidewalk in Burnett Park. Again, this protest was supposed to go just until 2. The sun's starting to peek back out, which it is very, very hot here. Casey, you said it feels like 100. I would argue it feels even warmer than that with the humidity out here. Seeing a lot of water bottles, though, people giving water bottles. I even saw somebody in a car window give a couple Gatorades out to people. But yeah, just a lot of cheers. I'll kind of just give you guys a moment and you can kind of hear and watch the people as they're marching here. Again, we'll have to see if they are going to take to the streets or if this is just going to be a march around Burnett Park here in the heart of downtown Dallas. But I'll give you guys just a moment. I'll step back and you can kind of listen and see to what's happening here in Fort Worth.
So as we watch these live pictures unfold in downtown Fort Worth, I'm also sitting here looking through social media, going through some of the posts. We're talking about protests today in Kaufman, in Frisco, McKinney, Euless, Sanger, Flower Mound, a number of North Texas cities holding these similar types of events today. Of course, the big anchor cities, Dallas and Fort Worth, is where we expected the bulk of the action to happen. And as you take a look at these live pictures right now in downtown Fort Worth, you can see that this crowd size pretty decent as well. We know that at least 10,000 have gathered over in Dallas, according to the police department. Don't have an official number from Fort Worth police just yet, but it's a little bit more informal. There's no speakers, there's not a stage set up, as you heard Amelia talking about. Just a lot of horn honking. People are waving flags. I've seen their signs, and they've certainly got their messaging. Not as much of a defined schedule of events, if you will, there in the Fort Worth celebration, but all over North Texas today, many people have spent their Saturdays to come out and have their voices heard about the Trump administration and as it relates to immigration enforcement in this country. President Trump dispatched Marines and National Guard troops in response to what was happening in Southern California. That sort of ratcheted things up. Then there was a lot of discussion in the last week about the use of National Guard troops. And Governor Greg Abbott of Texas came right out and said that he was going to deploy roughly 5,000 Texas National Guard troops and some 2,000 Texas Department of Public Safety troopers just for this weekend to be on standby to stage in what are called strategic places at the ready in case things get out of hand. But as you've been hearing from Amelia Jones and David Centendry there on the ground in Dallas and Fort Worth, not huge police presences as far as what you can at least see with the naked eye. We're going to get back to David Centendry live in Dallas. David, I see a wiping your brow there. Hot. People might be heading back towards City Hall, I understand.
Yeah, Casey. This crowd right now of 10,000 people is walking back up to Dallas City Hall right now. The tail end of this protest, we were following it for a while. We walked all the way down to Main Street, and then we said, hey, let's walk back around against the grain and get back to City Hall just so we could see the front of this crowd arrive back here at City Hall. Again, that number, 10,000 people, is what Dallas Police Department told us. At first we were caught off guard because when the protest began, they said it was around 1,300, and our eyes on the ground were saying, we think it's a bit more than that. And then as it developed, the estimated crowd size, again, 10,000 people out here, mostly peaceful, as we keep reiterating. That's what this protest was advertised as, a peaceful, non-violent protest. At the same time, they wanted this to be a, quote, nationwide day of defiance. We keep talking about how organizers and the people coming out here upset with the actions of President Donald Trump, who was obviously elected into office during last November's election. The question now, as people get back to Dallas City Hall, that I'm wondering, and I'm sure a lot of other people are wondering, is where do we go from here? You know, not just here present day, we believe that the protest will likely have some sort of a wrap where there's maybe some communicated message through loudspeakers to people in the middle of Dallas City Hall, but what happens after this? So a 2-hour protest, it's early mid-June right now, so are we going to see more protests throughout the summer? And then in the present time, are we going to see anything develop through the night? Casey has been talking about how a lot of times protests that happen at this time of day, especially in the heat, are typically going to be more peaceful. They want things to be calm. It's when the protests usually happen at night, when the sun goes down for some reason. That's usually when things start to get out of hand. You see some agitators, maybe some violence, confrontations with police, which is the opposite of what we've seen here today. You can hear people talking right now. Apologize for that expletive you heard in the background, but you can hear people talking and shouting. It's obviously very intense, very emotional, but again, no acts of violence from what we've seen here in the crowd today. This crowd of 10,000, it just started getting back to the front of Dallas City Hall a minute ago, and I imagine it's probably going to be another 10 or 15 minutes of people walking up and letting this march finish. Again, apologies for the curse words in the background as we're here live. That is just something that I do want to point out as we keep talking about it being nonviolent. That doesn't mean that there isn't verbal aggression that is said toward our president and some of the policies that he has implemented here in the past few months. So, Casey, I don't know if you got any questions for us, but I'm not sure if you guys have been talking at all or about what we could see after this. You know, it's just the beginning of the summer. As we know, summer is usually protest time. We saw that a few years ago after the killing of George Floyd, as protests took over major cities for, you know, June around this time that year, but also for different parts of the summer. It's really unclear what will happen next, and I'm sure a lot of that imagines what changes with any potential policy, with ICE actions. It is worth pointing out that Department of Homeland Security has made it clear that these protests are not going to deter their actions. Instead, they are only going to continue to ramp up enforcements. No, we do not. Sorry about that. Gentleman just asking if we saw anyone passed out as we talked before. Obviously, it's very hot out here and people have been having to load up on water, so we hope everyone's okay. But yeah, ICE has said that these protests are not going to deter their actions. So what will happen after these protests? You know, obviously a lot of protests across the country today, hundreds of them. If we're talking 10,000 here in Dallas, and maybe even more when we get a final end count, and all the other ones in North Texas, who knows how many people have protested throughout the country today, but will that same energy and passion grow throughout the summer if the change that these people want does not happen, or will it weaken and slip off a little bit and people get tired because they are unable to affect any sort of change?
Hey, David, any signs of fatigues? Are any troops out there, any members of the Texas National Guard that you've seen at all?
I'm glad you asked that because I wanted to point that out. I have not seen a single member of the Texas National Guard out here. That doesn't mean they're out here. I have not seen any Texas DPS officers out here. However, yesterday, I will say there was a planned protest in Northwest Dallas outside of ICE's headquarters. That protest did not happen. It didn't happen, but there were Texas DPS officers on standby at that location. But the one I was talking to, he said, hey, we were asked by Homeland Security to be here. So I asked if they would have any part in the protest today. The officer, he said, he's like, I don't know. He's like, that's above my pay grade. I just know I'm here at least for a few days in Dallas, and we'll see what's going to happen. But no, I haven't seen any Texas DPS officers out here.
It's so
and
interesting.
I've not seen any National Guard members.
You know, because as you know, David, there was so much build up to this, right? Like we talked about this for days and days about the number of troops being deployed across the state. And I just find it curious. I haven't seen a single military vehicle, any type of military apparatus in your live pictures, in Amelia's live pictures, or any of the other images coming in from our other teams.
And to your point that you made earlier, which was a great point, Casey, a lot of times if you're doing your job properly in those types of occupations, law enforcement, you don't want to be seen. So the fact that nothing violent has happened right now, I mean, heck, there could be 200 National Guard members within a quarter mile of me right now, and we just don't know. We don't know how many plainclothes officers are out here just monitoring. We know, that can at least be people who relay a message to people who are clothed and have, their proper gear with them. But yeah, so we don't know, but the fact that they're not seen might just mean that they're doing their job well, and also might mean that the protesters out here are doing a good job of just keeping everything in line, voicing their message, but not becoming agitators.
Right, all right. Fox 4's David Centendry. Holding the fort down there in Dallas. David, thank you. Let's get you back to Amelia Jones over in Fort Worth, where we also have a helicopter shot coming from Cowtown and the events that are going on there. Amelia, the same question to you that I asked David. Have you seen any members of the military or any members of the National Guard there where you are?
Hi there, Casey. No, I have not. And my photographer Jordan and I were just talking about after this hit with you all, I think we're going to move and maybe get another perspective because again, this protest, it's taking up a large area. So we're just showing you a small snippet of it here on West 7th Street, but it continues to go further down. It continues to go past Burnett Park in the heart of downtown Fort Worth here. But no, I haven't seen any members of the military, whether that's they're in full uniform, here by themselves just to see things, or if they were specifically doing a job to enforce safety here at the protest. No, we have not seen any members of the military so far here. I haven't even seen Fort Worth Police patrol by. Again, as I mentioned, Fort Worth Police said as long as the protest stays peaceful, what they are going to do is patrol the area on bikes. So you're not going to see any large squad cars driving around. You're not going to see officers just stationed on different corners at the intersection. They're just going to ride around and patrol the area and make sure people are staying on that sidewalk, make sure they're not getting into the street. You hear a lot of honking here, and that's exactly what the protesters want. This isn't honking as to get out of the street. We have not seen any animosity towards drivers and the protesters here. We haven't seen anybody get in anyone's face. A lot of people have American flags or other flags flying out of their window as they're honking at protesters, and also signs, people with their phones filming the protest. So they're almost protesting themselves as they're driving through downtown Fort Worth, just in a different way. And this protest, it was scheduled to be over in 5 minutes, and I really do not see that happening. I mean, we see people, the crowd, they're just making loops around Burnett Park here with their signs, and more people are coming here. They just have lined the street on West 7th Street. Everything has remained peaceful, though. I know David has mentioned that while there might not be any violence going on, there might be some violent rhetoric. We haven't even heard that in terms of chants here in Fort Worth. We've been talking that this is a little bit more informal. It was just come with your signs and your flags, come together and protest at Burnett Park. That's where people were told to organize today at noon. And it's been like this ever since noon. Just more people showing up. And again, like I said, Jordan and I, my photographer, we're going to try to move around a little bit, give you a different perspective here so we can look back up West 7th Street where more people got some cowbell, okay? We've seen some drums as well, some music here. I know there was somebody on a megaphone chanting that's further in the park here, but no scheduled speakers. You know, there wasn't a podium, there wasn't a stage. There is, you know, some rhetoric on the signs that we have to be careful about, but, you know, the signs I think are really how people are raising their voices, making their voices heard. We can tell a lot of them are homemade, and even the drivers with their flags flying out of the windows. See another one with a sign. You know, I feel like that's how they're being involved and participating in the protest, you know, without standing on the sidewalks, but it's a way for them to show their support for, you know, what is going on here. And as we've been talking about, it's a day of defiance. No Kings protests are happening across the country, not just here in Fort Worth. We've seen David with the protesters as they're marching through the streets of downtown Dallas. And so again, that's similar to what we're seeing. And I just got an update. News is happening live as we talked about. This is a bit unfiltered than our normal newscast. So our team just let me know that Fort Worth Fire says they are treating someone right now. We don't know if that is heat related. It is extremely hot out here. One person is being treated right now, but unknown if it is heat related, and that information comes to us from Fort Worth Fire. I will say we did see a MedStar ambulance drive past, and I was curious if it was heading somewhere else in Fort Worth or if it had something to do potentially with a protester. We'll investigate that further and hopefully bring you an update. If it is heat related, people are giving out water bottles. I've seen a lot of people with fans around their necks. People are kind of starting to disperse a little as the protest was supposed to wrap up around 2, which we're very, very close to that time. However, I think a lot of people are going to stick around, and hopefully they heed those warnings and they stay hydrated, make sure they're keeping themselves safe. But again, we'll check on that Fort Worth Fire and that person that they are treating to see if it's heat related. But we have not seen any concerns, again, with people being in the street, being aggressive towards drivers at all. From our perspective and vantage point, they've really stayed in the areas where they're supposed to. They've stayed on the sidewalk. They've stayed within those white lines. So that's what we're seeing here in the downtown Fort Worth area. But we will give you a different vantage point. As we know, this protest, I mean, it takes up a lot of space here. It's not just on this corner that we're showing you. It goes, people are packed into Burnett Park. They are further down West 7th Street, just nonstop honking here as people go through downtown Fort Worth. It is, if you're coming through this area and maybe you didn't know that this was going on, it's very, very loud. I could see where it could be overwhelming for somebody if they didn't know that this was happening in their city today. But it seems like a lot of the drivers are making a point on purpose to come down here with the signs and people out of their windows, people out of their sunroofs. But yeah, Casey, that's what we're seeing so far. Again, the good news to report, things have remained peaceful.
All right, Fox 4's Amelia Jones reporting live. Excellent work there in Fort Worth. We appreciate it. It is 2 o'clock, so it is the top of the hour. You are watching Fox Local, continuing streaming coverage of the protest events going on today across North Texas. I'm Casey Stiegel, and we welcome you to this special programming. We've been on the air now for a couple of hours, and we're going to continue to follow the events unfolding in Dallas and Fort Worth and other points around the Metroplex as a national day of protest is unfolding. Let's listen into a live interview that David Sentendry is doing there at Dallas City Hall. And again, we want to warn our viewers, viewer discretion is advised. This is all live, raw, and unfiltered. So we apologize if there are any profanities in the language or any signage you see. Let's listen into this interview.
Just the due process, like, are you okay with people getting?
No, obviously not. People who commit crimes should be tried, and that's the problem that I have, is that whatever crimes you are accusing some people of, even if it's a minimal crime or they have no crimes at all, they have tattoos, and they're literally now sitting in a prison instead of getting deported to their home indefinitely. But I do think that everybody should get a trial, because if you are the victim of a crime, you would want to go to court to face that person. And I feel like the current administration, if they are just deporting people that commit crimes, I feel like they're taking away that closure from victims as well. Because that is a big thing that this administration used, some specific cases, and those families got closure. They got to go to court and face the person that did whatever they did to them.
Last question for you. I know it was a peaceful demonstration. You know, I should say there was no violence committed today. How important was that for you and for, you know, people that you came out here with?
Well, I do want a peaceful protest. I understand some people's sentiment, but I feel like there's always going to be somebody who's going to take advantage, and because people are angry, those people are going to take advantage and cause havoc. But it seems like they're being pretty peaceful right now. Hopefully it stays that way. Yeah.
You never know, I guess, come nighttime.
I was here, or not here, I was at Margaret Hunt on Monday. I can tell you, it was not as bad as I think people made it seem. one person was arrested right away, and that was it.
Yeah, one person was arrested. I mean, we saw like some water bottles and rocks getting thrown at officers, and I think the street thing was more unexpected when people were going into the street. But thankfully, it was one person arrested, and I don't think anyone was injured from what we heard.
I think one person was caught up in the mess, but I don't think they took an ambulance or anything. I just remember seeing him. But I mean, for the most part, I've had to remind people, Dallas police is not working with immigration. If you get pulled over for speeding, they're not going to check, or they're not supposed to call like immigration. So I feel like people are forgetting, and I just try to remind them.
They're forgetting that this is a federal issue and not a local issue.
Yeah, this is not local. This is not Dallas. If you have beef with Dallas, right now is not the time. Like, we have bigger things with the country in general.
I appreciate you taking time. I'll let you get back up there.
Okay.
Thank you for stopping. Be safe.
Been listening in on a live interview David Centendry has been doing with a woman who has showed up to Dallas City Hall to have her voice heard this afternoon. And that's what today is all about, exercising your First Amendment right, your right to free speech, and allowing people to demonstrate and to gather and to be able to express their opinions and to be able to do so without persecution and to be able to do so in a peaceful and controlled manner. And fortunately, that is what we have seen across North Texas today, as an estimated 10,000 people have gathered in downtown Dallas. That figure according to the Dallas Police Department this afternoon, and the aerial pictures have really backed that up. The chopper over Dallas had to go get some more fuel. So the live pictures you're looking at right now on the right-hand side of your screen is from downtown Fort Worth, the event near Burnett Park. And that too is a pretty big demonstration, not as organized as the one in Dallas, but you can see thousands of people have turned out in downtown Fort Worth today. That's not far from the convention center and not terribly far or so, right down there from West 7th Street in the heart of the downtown area. People have been walking on the sidewalks there. You can see that they're holding signage, and they're just here to talk about the issues that are on their minds, and that includes immigration, and that includes a number of other issues under the President Trump White House. And fortunately today, no major reports of any casualties or any problems in any of the major cities where these events have been happening. Some are taking place this evening, and that will be the case down in Austin, for example. They are holding some demonstrations after the sun goes down. So those could be different stories altogether. So this is something that we will, of course, be monitoring not only throughout the day, but throughout the evening as well. Let's get back to Fox 4's David Centendry, who is live at Dallas City Hall. Some 10,000 people, and the aerial pictures, that bird's eye view really puts it into perspective, David.
Yeah, it really does. And let me know if there's any issues with my microphone, because I am about 20 yards away from my photographer. I'm catching up right now as I was talking to someone. But yeah, we are back into the center of Dallas City Hall. And this is, you know, what looks like the end of the protest right now. This is where the march is wrapping back around, back to where it all began. We see Dallas police cars that are pulling back up to, once again, block this intersection here just in front of Dallas City Hall. Thank you. Hello, sir. And we were just talking to one woman a minute ago, had a nice conversation I think you guys were able to dip into and just try to get her perspective. She was a veteran, and I was asking her, you know, is it the fact that people are out here because they don't want anyone arrested / deported? Is it the due process? And she was really just stressing the due process from her point of view. That's why she's out here. She has, you know, obviously seen the reports that we have reported on of certain people being arrested right after coming out of court, situations like that. Homeland Security has maintained that, you know, about 75% of the people that they have arrested are people who either have a criminal conviction or have pending charges. We don't know to the extent of those charges, But we do know that the president has had a policy of, quote, worst first, and ICE, Department of Homeland Security, says it wants to maintain that policy. I can tell you here in Dallas, we don't have a whole lot of local data from what ICE Dallas is doing. So ICE Dallas is, you know, they're obviously keeping track of how many people have been arrested, how many people they've arrested for what reasons, for what crimes or reasons, but they have not released that data to us. We have been asking specifically that Homeland Security data that they had on a federal level, talking about over 150,000 people arrested was in the first 100 days, so that ended in April. Unsure what the numbers are since then, but that's what federal ICE has said, the headquarters, but we don't know what's happening here in Dallas. So a lot of our local complaints from people here in North Texas, we just don't have any good data to back that up with what's happening, because ICE has not provided that, even though we've been asking for quite some time.
Yeah,
but
David, it's interesting, you know,
right here at the protest.
I'm sorry to interrupt you there with a little bit of a delay jumping in. Yeah, I mean, we cover this. It's a topic that we cover quite frequently, and certain field offices are a little more active than others, let's say. The Houston ICE field office has been extremely busy. They've been on a number of roundups and a number of operations with the FBI and other federal partners and local partners. We have been reaching out to the Dallas ICE office since President Trump took office, trying to go on ride-alongs to get some kind of information, and it's been a little bit more difficult playing ball with them. But David, as you also know, sometimes it's just a matter of certain organizations don't want too much attention, because then that calls into question advertising and giving the bad guys a heads up.
For sure. But to your point, our Fox station in Houston, Texas, KRIV, they have done ride-alongs with ICE officials in Houston. They have had a lot more access, it feels like, to just get a feel for what's happening, because at the end of the day, people want to know what these government organizations are doing. They just want the data, they want to know, and from there, you make your decision. But I cannot tell you, just candidly, how many times I have asked ICE in Dallas for an on-camera interview with someone who can relay some detailed information, answer questions. We've asked repeatedly for ride-alongs to see how these situations play out. Denied, 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 denied. We're just not getting that access. And again, we're seeing that happen in other areas of not just Texas, but other areas of the country. So for whatever reason, can't tell you right now, but I think people on all sides of this debate at least want to have the data and then be able to make their own decision from there. I will say, ICE Dallas has been active on X, formerly known as Twitter, putting out different posts here and there about, you know, we've arrested this violent offender, we've arrested this violent offender. And you might get, you know, 1 or 2 a week, but when we're talking about how many people were arrested, which, you know, we don't know that full number in Dallas, we know it's, you know, over 100,000 across the country, how many people, you know, had traffic tickets, speeding tickets, you know, minor drug possession crimes. We just want the data.
Right, there's no real context to put it up against, right.
Yeah. And I think there was even a post this week from ICE Dallas that talked about over 100 Chinese nationals who were arrested and sent back on a plane. And it talked about, you know, of that group, one was a murderer, one was a drug trafficker, and there were a couple other violent criminals in there, which I think a lot of people here would be, I don't want to say a lot of people, I know people here would be okay with that situation. That is in line with what the president has been talking about, worst first, and not a lot of people are going to give pushback. But when you have over 100 people who were sent back on a plane and we get information about less than half a dozen, it just makes you wonder, what is the situation for the others? It could all very much be warranted. Again, we're not taking a side on this, it's just stressing the data.
Sure, and a lot of unknowns in a time that's pretty frightening for a lot of Americans. As we said, people struggling to make ends meet, trying to figure out how to keep a roof over their head and food in their children's stomachs. And then you fold in the social pressures and all of the other contentious issues and then we sort of reach a boiling point. David Sintendry, I wonder how they're going to be able to disperse the crowd. That was something that we were talking about here in the control room. I hear megaphones. I know that they've got a microphone and speakers there, but is this a situation where they just tell folks to start going home? Do you have any idea?
You know, I don't have any idea. I will just tell you from past experience, a lot of the endings of these protests are, somewhat anticlimactic. There's someone who's a final speaker and then everyone just kind of goes their way. Given the area that we're at here in downtown Dallas, if you know downtown at all, if you know City Hall, parking isn't necessarily easy to come by. It's not like there's enough parking for everyone just to park around City Hall, hop in their car and leave. So you've had people walking from blocks and blocks away. I think it's a 6/10 of a mile walk from our station that I came from. And I saw a lot of people walking from beyond our station, so maybe a mile walk away. But yeah, they're definitely wrapping up because they're talking almost in past tense right now at the podium saying that was absolutely incredible. So they're talking about what they accomplished today. We don't know how they will disperse. Again, it's early. I would imagine it's something like, maybe a sporting event where everyone just kind of walks away. There's some police guiding them, blocking off certain roads until enough people get away and it's safe for cars to drive through, because this road is still blocked off. You're not going to let any cars drive through when you got 10,000 people trying to walk and get to their cars. But I can't imagine, it's not going to at least take 30, 45 minutes for people to fully get out of here. They're talking about wrapping up. I'm not sure if you can hear out there. They're asking people to pick up their trash. They're saying we have a good relationship with DPD and we want to maintain that. We want to keep this space as clean as we found it, so just pick up after yourselves, and that would be great. So they are definitely ending right now. We'll see what happens next, Casey.
David, I'm getting an alert right now on Slack from Amelia Jones. People that are familiar with Slack, if they use it in their workplaces, it's a workday tool. We have it here at Fox, and we're starting to use it more and more often to keep everyone on the same page. And we have a thread going. Amelia Jones just says things are dying down a little bit in Fort Worth. So that notification just coming through. So that seems to be relative to what we're seeing in the pictures on the right-hand side of your screen. David, just again pointing out to our viewers, on the right-hand side of our screen is an aerial view of the crowd in downtown Fort Worth, and then you are on the left-hand side of the screen in the upper box, and then a ground shot on the lower box. And so we're getting some indication that things are winding down a little bit. And David, you're hearing that as well in Dallas, and I think that's a good analogy, just pretty much like an event letting out. The AAC is finishing up, yeah. So just sit and wait your turn to get out.
Yeah, and again, we've talked earlier, Dallas Police Department has known about this protest for most of the week, so they certainly have a plan. They've had it in place. We've talked about the public works vehicles that are blocking off streets, different officers blocking off streets, so you can see people are going away. They're going to get some assistance from law enforcement on just getting out of here safely, no traffic coming through, and it looks like things are coming to a wrap for now.
All right, well, David Sintendry, we're going to ask you to stand by with us a little while longer. The plan,
for sure,
tentatively is to go through 2:30, so another 14 minutes or so on Fox Local, and continue our coverage kind of depending on what's going on. And so we'll just ask David to hang by for just a few minutes or so. And also asking for Amelia Jones, our team over in Fort Worth, we're asking for her to contact MedStar, see if they can share anything about that call. Our assignment desk saying per Fort Worth Fire, we know that one person has been treated, but we don't know if it's heat related. So we are trying to get in touch with MedStar to see if we can get more information about that. But again, these events got started today at noon local time. So they were scheduled to end at 2 o'clock. It's 2:17 right now, and I think that what you're seeing is the tail end of these protests that have been happening in Fort Worth and in Dallas. Things are seem to be winding down, the activity slowing down a little bit as people start to get out of there and leave. David and Amelia point out the parking situation a mess. So once people finish up where they are, then they've got to hike it a little bit to get back to their vehicles so they can get home. People do need to plan accordingly. It is a Saturday afternoon, and if people have plans and you're going to get out and about, go out to see a friend, go out and grab an early dinner, early happy hour, just be aware that you have a lot of people that have descended on downtown Dallas and downtown Fort Worth for these events, and it's going to take a little bit of time for the traffic to unwind. But fortunately, no major injuries and no major reports of any violence, at least across North Texas. And also, frankly, searching around on social media and our intrepid news team here, keeping me up to speed as we have been on the air, no major incidents reported at other events that are also taking place around the country as well, from big cities to little towns. No Kings going back to the website, the organizer, a nationwide day of defiance, from city blocks to small towns, from courthouse steps to community parks. We are taking action to reject authoritarianism and show the world what democracy really looks like. The flag doesn't belong to President Trump. Quoting here, it belongs to us. We're not watching history happen, we're making it happen. And you are looking at history being made in downtown Dallas and downtown Fort Worth as we speak, as people are wrapping up this National Day of Protests. It's been a busy one and a hot one across North Texas. You can hear the horns honking. That's primarily what we've seen in Fort Worth. No organized speakers or any activists that have been up on the podium, just a lot of signage, people gathering on the side of the road, on the sidewalk there in Burnett Park, in the heart of downtown Fort Worth, and then marching around the streets a little bit there. But a lot of horn honking going on, much more of an organized presence in Dallas for sure, where Dallas police say some 10,000 people showed up to that event. I'll be curious to see the total tally coming in from Fort Worth PD. I'm not the best at judging crowd sizes, especially from aerial pictures. It's a little bit deceiving, but it'll be interesting as all of the official tallies do start to trickle in. So that is the plan. Adam Fullerton, the discussion on Slack, where we're going to wrap this at 2:30 and hand the coverage off to Live Now for their continuing coverage of the protests and other big news of the day. And then if anything happens with local protests here in DFW, then we will sure be able to go back and do any cut-ins and any push alerts on social media. Obviously, this is a story that we are going to continue to monitor. As I also said earlier, there are protests planned tonight in Austin, and I am unsure of the time in San Antonio. I know that there was an evening protest in San Antonio a couple of days ago. There might be an event planned for this evening in San Antonio as well, unless they went ahead and did it in the afternoon hours like much of North Texas did. But that's something that's still going to be going on as we cross into the evening hours, and a story that we're going to continue to follow and stay on top of here at Fox 4 and on Fox Local. As you recall, a lot of this got started after violence and clashes with the National Guard and protesters in Los Angeles and in Southern California. Some of the pictures we've seen out of there this past week have been gnarly, cars set on fire, just some pretty unbelievable clashes between demonstrators and law enforcement. Clearly, people saw those pictures. They saw the images and the narrative that was coming out of Southern California, and everyone said, we don't want that. We don't want a repeat of that where we are. And that allowed, I think, some states, not just Texas, but others as well, to allow for a little bit of extra preparedness and a little bit of extra timing to build in a little bit of cushion to make sure that they could try their best to not have a repeat of Los Angeles or Southern California in other parts of the country with these days of protests as well. And so far that has been the case on this Saturday afternoon. As you look at live pictures of the crowds dispersing in Dallas and in Fort Worth after a day of protests. Of course, a lot of the focus has been on these two cities, but as we have been mentioning throughout this coverage, Carrollton, Kaufman, Frisco, McKinney, Arlington, Denton, Weatherford, Burleson, Sanger, Flower Mound, Tyler. Those are just North Texas cities in the Fox 4 viewing area that were holding their own protests, their own demonstrations, their own organized events today as well. Fort Worth and Dallas just so happen to be the two anchors, if you will. But large groups of people on a very hot, humid summer day. And at this point, fortunately, no reports of any major injuries or any medical emergencies or any casualties on the ground when you have this many people that are coming out for something like this. These are well orchestrated. Dallas police know what they're doing. Fort Worth police, all of the sheriff's offices, all of the men and women in blue, they've done this a time or two. And they almost have it down to a science. You can never fully predict things when you involve a human element and a human component. But boy, they really do a great job, and they've got this down almost to a science in terms of letting these events sort of organically happen, and organically happen without seeing much of what's going on in the background, not seeing much of how the sausage is made, if you will. And it's really fascinating how, as you can get such a huge group of people that will assemble in one place, and then everything, it runs smoothly, it goes off without a hitch. I see another interview going on there. Matt, I'm not sure if we're able to pop in and listen to that if we have time. An interview happening in the upper left corner of the screen there. Protest in Dallas. I think David is doing an interview and getting some sound with people for our later shows.
All right, so why are you out here today?
Today, I'm out here to practice our rights as women and to show everybody not to be scared, to come out here to fight for what's right and show everybody else that what's going on is it's not justice. It shouldn't be happening.
Why are you out here?
Today I'm out here to be the voice of all the immigrant parents that came to this country without nothing and has given us everything that they could.
What are your stories? Where's your, do you live in Dallas?
Yes, born and raised.
Born and raised? Born and raised?
Born and raised here in Dallas, Texas.
Family? Any parents immigrants at all?
Yes.
Where are your parents from?
Guanajuato.
Okay.
My parents, I am very fortunate for them to have came here with papers, but that doesn't mean that my privilege is going to undermine the other people that don't have the privilege to be here legally.
I was talking to someone a little bit ago, and her issue more so was with the due process. We know that a lot of people are getting arrested who have crimes committed, some of them violent crimes. We don't know how many because the administration is not necessarily providing all of that data to us. It's kind of keeping that close to the vest. A lot of people are upset about that. So we don't know how many people have violent crimes. But my question to you, if someone does commit a violent crime or something more egregious, drug trafficker, sex trafficker, something like that, are you okay with them being deported? Is it more so just the low-level stuff you want to keep people safe? Walk me through what your ideal situation would be.
So I worked in immigration and criminal, within a criminal attorney for about 2 years. And I will say that if it's more of like a heinous crime, like you said, where it's like killing, murder, sex trafficking, something that even as a citizen you would want to be put up for life, then yes, deportation, it's illegal. But if it's something like DWI, which is so many U.S. citizens have them. I've seen working with an attorney have up to 5, and they get weekends in jail for 10 years. And now you're wanting to put our people, our race into, I'm not even going to say jails, but they're concentration camps. That's what it's coming down to. They're not letting people get that due process that is needed. And I mean, the stories are everywhere. People are being picked up off the street, and that's just not right. So to answer your question, heinous crimes, yes, I agree. Like, they need to get deported. But if it's something that, like, you and I...
Okay, just to wrap things up here, folks, I'm reading a report from the Wall Street Journal at the moment on social media. The Wall Street Journal is reporting right now that President Trump has instructed ICE and other immigration officers to temporarily pause arrests at farms, hotels, and restaurants. So that is a development, again, according to the reporting of the Wall Street Journal, that's just crossing right now. So we're going to work on getting more information on that. Also, another breaking development, the Texas Department of Public Safety telling us that earlier today, DPS identified a credible threat towards state lawmakers planning to attend a protest later today at the Texas state capitol. So out of an abundance of caution, the Capitol and the Capitol grounds were evacuated around 1 p.m. and both remain temporarily closed. That is according to Texas DPS here at 2:29 on the Saturday afternoon. A development we will continue to monitor, but a credible threat identified by Texas DPS aimed at state lawmakers planning to attend a protest later today. And of course, in light of the news out of Minnesota with the deaths of lawmakers there, that is something that is being taken very seriously. That is going to do it for our coverage right now. I'm Casey Stiegel. On behalf of David Centendry, Amelia Jones, and the rest of the Fox 4 team, we appreciate you joining us for this special continuing digital coverage. We will see you back here tonight for Fox 4 News at 9. Have a good rest of your afternoon, everybody.